It's successful if the software team wants to turn off the GPU cluster. But if they want to keep the GPU cluster on, it's not successful. Dojo's first application will be consuming video data for training that would then be run in the inference engine on the car. But, and that I think is an important test to see if it actually is good but is it actually better than GPU cluster or not?
But we're going to try whatever we can do to get to the point where we can train everything just with the simulator if we had to, but we will never have to because we have so much real-world data that no one else has.
I think a lot of puzzle pieces out there for success. We just need more strong people to also just help us make it work.
Yeah.
That is the actual bottleneck. So that is the actual bottleneck, I would say, and really one of the reasons that we are putting on this event.
Tesla Throwback Thursday. Today we complete Tesla's 2021 AI Day. This is part C, the Q&A portion of the presentation. If you missed part A and B, they will be here, or you can catch them at the end of the video and click on the cards there. And without further ado, let's get to it.
So we're happy to answer any questions you have about anything on the software, hardware side, where things are going, and yeah, fire away.
First off, I mean, thanks to all the presenters. That was just super cool to see everything. I'm just curious at a high level, and this is kind of a question for really anyone who wants to take it. To what extent are you interested in publishing or open sourcing anything that you do for the future?
I mean, it is fundamentally extremely expensive to create the system. Somehow that has to be paid for. I'm not sure how to pay for it if it's fully open sourced, unless people want to work for free.
You working for free? You got open source? You gonna do it for free? Nah, you're not gonna do it for free.
But I should say that other car companies want to license it and use it in their cars. That would be cool. This is not intended to be just limited to Tesla cars.
Is for the Dojo supercomputer. So did you solve the compiler problem of scaling to these many nodes, or if it is solved, is it only applicable to Dojo? Because I'm doing research in deep learning accelerators, and getting the correct scalability or the distribution, even in one chip, is extremely difficult from the research project's perspective. So I was just curious.
Have we solved the problem? Not yet. Are we confident we will solve the problem? Yes. We have demonstrated networks on prototype hardware now. We have models, performance models showing the scaling. The difficulty is, as you said, how do we keep the localities? If we can do enough model parallel, enough data parallel to keep most of the things local, we just keep scaling. We have to fit the parameters in our working set in our SRAM that we have, and we flow through the pipe. As we get further scale for further processor nodes, have more local memory trade-offs with bandwidth, we can do more things. But as we see it now, the applications that Tesla has, we see a clear path.
And our modularity story means we can have different ratios, different aspects created out of it. I mean, this is something that we chose for our applications internally.
Given that training is such a soft scaling application, even though you have all this compute and have a high bandwidth interconnect, it could not give you that performance because you are doing computations on limited memory at different locations. So I was that's very curious to me when you said it's solved, because I just jumped onto the opportunity and would love to know more, given that how much you can open source.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the proof's in the pudding. So we should have Dojo operational next year, and I think we'll obviously use it for training, video training. It's the primary application initially is we've got vast amounts of video, and how do we train vast amounts of video as efficiently as possible? Also shorten the amount of time. Like if you're trying to train to a task, just in general, innovation is how many iterations and what is the average progress between each iteration. And so if you can reduce the time between iterations, the rate of improvement is much better. You know, if it takes like sometimes a couple days for a model to train versus a couple hours, that's a big deal. It's successful if the software team wants to turn off the GPU cluster. But if they want to keep the GPU cluster on, it's not successful.
Love the presentation. Thank you for getting us out here. Love everything, especially the simulation part of the presentation. I was wondering, it looked very realistic. Are there any plans to maybe expand simulation to other parts of the company in any way?
So as we go down the path to full self-driving, we're going to have to simulate more and more of the vehicle. Currently, we're simulating vehicle dynamics, but we're going to need BMS, we're going to need the MCU, we're going to need every single part of the vehicle integrated. And that actually makes the autopilot simulator really useful for places outside of autopilot. So I want to expand, or we want to expand eventually to being a universal simulation platform. But I think before that, we're going to be spinning up a lot of Optimus support. And then a little bit further down the line, we have some rough ideas on potentially how to get the simulation infrastructure and some of the cool things we've built into the hands of people outside of the company.
Optimus is the code name for the Tesla bot.
Oops.
Thank you for the great presentation and putting all of these cool things together. Yeah, for a while I have been thinking that the car is already a robot. So why not a humanoid robot? And I'm so happy that today you mentioned that you are going to build such a thing. If I could hear a little more about this type of putting modalities together, including language and vision.
Driving is fundamentally basically almost entirely vision neural nets. Basically, it's running on a biological vision neural net. And what we're doing here is a silicon camera neural net. There is some amount of audio. You want to hear if there's like emergency vehicles. I guess converse with the people in the car. If somebody's yelling something at the car, the car needs to understand what that is. All the things that are necessary for it to be fully autonomous.
Thank you for all the great work that you've shown. My question is for the team, because the data that was shown seems to be predominantly from the United States that the FSD computer is being trained on. But as it gets rolled out to different countries, which have their own road systems and challenges that come with it, how do you think that it's going to scale? Like I'm assuming like ground up is not a very viable solution. So how does that transfer to different countries?
We actually do train on using data from probably like 50 different countries. And as we're trying to advance full self-driving, we need to pick one country. And since we're located here, we pick the US. I get a lot of questions like, why not even Canada? I'm like, well, because the roads are a little different in Canada, different enough. When trying to solve a hard problem, let's not add additional complexity right now. Let's just solve it for the US, and then we'll extrapolate to the rest of the world. But we do use video from all around the world.
Different countries have roads, and they have curbs, and they have cars, and everything we're building is fairly general for that.
The prime directive is don't crash.
Right, and that's true for every country.
Yes, this is the prime directive.
When you do the photometric process, multi-view geometry, how much of an error do you see? Is it like 1 millimeter, 1 centimeter? So if it's not confidential.
It's usually within a couple centimeters, 3 or 4 centimeters. We primarily try to find scalable ways to label. In some occasions, we use other sensors to help benchmark, but we primarily try to use cameras for this system.
Is the humanoid that's behind you guys, is that kind of brought out of the production hell timeline and saying that humans are underrated in that process?
Something that I say is taken to too much of an extreme. There are parts of the Tesla system that are almost completely automated. And then there are some parts that are almost completely manual. If you were to walk through the whole production system, you would see a very wide range from, like I said, fully automatic to almost completely manual. But the vast majority, most of it is already automated. The robot is not prompted by specifically by manufacturing needs. It's just that obviously making the pieces that are needed for a useful humanoid robot. I guess we probably should make it. And if we don't, someone else will. And so I guess we should make it and make sure it's safe.
Thank you for the presentation. And my question will be about scaling of Dojo. And in particular, how do you scale the compute nodes in terms of thermals and power delivery? Because there is only so much heat that you can dispense and only so much power that you can bring to like cluster rack. And how do you plan to scale it? And how do you plan to scale it in multiple data centers?
So from a thermal standpoint and power standpoint, we've designed it very modular. So what you saw in the compute tile, that will cool the entire tile. So what we
once we hook it up to, it is liquid cooled on both the top and the bottom side. It doesn't need anything else. And so when we talk about clicking these together, once we click it to power and once we click it to cooling, it will be fully powered and fully cooled. And all of that is less than a cubic foot.
So Tesla has a lot of expertise in power electronics and in cooling. So we took the power electronics expertise from the vehicle powertrain and the sort of the advanced cooling that we developed for the power electronics and for the vehicle and applied that to the supercomputer.
This is the beauty of Tesla's manufacturing prowess and their experience of over 2 decades of building battery electric vehicles. They've learned a thing or two that other people in this industry just haven't had the opportunity to because they don't build electric vehicles. The Dojo team will benefit greatly from various segments of Tesla's business. They get to share in Tesla's previous successes. When the principles of physics is your guide, there will be multiple opportunities to throw away the old way of doing things and create something special and achieving what was previously thought to be impossible.
So it seems like a natural consequence of using, significantly faster training hardware is that you'd be either training models over a lot more data, or you'd be training a lot more complex models, which would be potentially significantly more expensive to run at inference time on the cars. I guess I was wondering, if there was a plan to, also apply Dojo as something that you'd be using, on the self-driving cars, and if so, do you foresee additional challenges there?
As you could see, Andre's models are not just for cars. There are auto labeling models. There are other models that are beyond car application, but they feed into the car stack. So Dojo will be used for all of those too.
Dojo's first application will be consuming video data for training that would then be run in the inference engine on the car. But and that I think is an important test to see if it actually is good but is it actually better than GPU cluster or not?
Shout out to FSD version 12.
A generalized neural net training computer. But it's very much optimized to be a neural net. CPUs and GPUs, they're not made to be, they're not designed specifically for training neural nets. With Dojo, we're saying okay, let's just ASIC the whole thing. It's built for one purpose, and that is neural net training. And just generally, any system that is designed for a specific purpose will be better than one that is designed for a general purpose.
Describe 2 separate systems. One was for vision, other for planner and control. Does Dojo allow you to train networks that cross that boundary? And second thing is, if you were able to train such networks, would you have the onboard compute capability in the FSD system to be able to run that under your tight latency constraints? Thanks.
Yeah, I think we should be able to train planner networks on Dojo or any GPUs. It's really invariant to the platform. And I think, if anything, once we make this entire thing end-to-end, it will be more efficient than decoding a lot of these intermediate states. So you should be able to run faster if you make the entire thing end-to-end neural networks. We can avoid a lot of decoding of these intermediate states and only decode only essential things required for driving the car.
Over time in the stack, neural networks have taken on more and more functionality. And so we want everything to be trained end-to-end because we see that that works best. But we are building it incrementally. So right now, the interface, there is vector space, and we are consuming it in the planner, but nothing really fundamentally prevents you from actually taking features and eventually fine-tuning end-to-end. So I think that's definitely where this is headed.
You don't have to have a neural net for control and planning, but it's probably ultimately better.
My question is, we've seen other companies, for example, use reinforcement learning and machine learning to optimize power consumption in data centers and all kinds of other internal processes. My question is Tesla using machine learning within its manufacturing design or other engineering processes?
I discourage use of machine learning because it's really difficult. Unless you have to use machine learning, don't do it. It's usually a red flag when somebody says, we want to use machine learning to solve this task. I'm like, that sounds like bullshit. 99.9% of the time, you do not need it. You reach for machine learning when you need to, but I've not found it to be a convenient, easy thing to do. It's a super hard thing to do. That may change if you've got a humanoid robot that can, understand normal instructions. Yeah, generally minimize use of machine learning in the factory.
Based on your videos from the simulator, it looked like a combination of graphical and neural approaches. I'm curious what the set of underlying techniques that are used for your simulator and specifically for neural rendering, if you can share.
At the bottom of the stack, it's just traditional game techniques, just rasterization, real time, very similar to what you'd see in like GTA. On top of that, we're doing real time ray tracing, and then those results were really hot off the press. We had that little asterisk at the bottom that was from last night. We're going into the neural rendering space. We're trying out a bunch of different things. We want to get to the point where the neural rendering is the cherry on the top that pushes it to the point where the models will never be able to overfit on our simulator. Currently, we're doing things similar to photorealism enhancement. There's a recent paper enhancing photorealism enhancement. But we can do a lot more than what they could do in that paper because we have way more labeled data, way more compute, and also we have a lot more control over our environments. And we also have a lot of people who can help us make this run at real time.
Ding, 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 ding. Tell him what he's won, Johnny. Your mother. Right. This is the backbone, the crux of why Tesla is able to just achieve things others simply say are impossible. They may be impossible for you, but have you seen what this company has done lately?
But we're going to try whatever we can do to get to the point where we can train everything just with the simulator if we had to, but we will never have to because we have so much real-world data that no one else has.
The simulator is very helpful when there's these rare cases like collision avoidance right before an accident. And then, ironically, the better our cars become at avoiding accidents, the fewer accidents there are, so then our training set is small, so then we have to make them crash in the simulation.
For your humanoid context, I'm wondering if you've decided on what use cases you're going to start with and what the grand challenges are in that context to make this viable.
It's basically going to start with just dealing with work that is boring, repetitive, and dangerous.
Are you using any sort of domain adaptation techniques to basically bridge the gap between your simulated data and your actual real-world data? Because I imagine it's kind of dangerous to just deploy models which are solely trained on simulated data. So maybe some sort of explicit domain adaptation or something. Is that going on anywhere in your pipeline?
We're producing the videos straight out of the simulator, the full clips with kinematics and everything, and then we're just immediately training on them, but it's not the entire data set. It's just a small targeted segment, and we only are evaluating based on real-world video. We're paying a lot of attention to make sure we don't overfit, and if we have to start doing fancier things, we will, but currently we're not having an issue with it overfitting on the simulator. We will as we scale up the data, and that's what we're hoping to use neural rendering to bridge that gap, to push that even further out. We've already done things where we're using the same network as in the car, but retrain it to detect sim versus real to drive our art decisions, and that's actually helped prevent some of these things as well.
Besides, overwhelmingly, the data set is the real video from the cars on the actual roads. Nothing's weirder or has more corner cases than reality. But then if we find, say, a few examples of something very odd, then in order to train it effectively, we want to create simulations, say 1,000 simulations that are variants of that quirky thing that we saw. It's called the March of Nines, like how do you get to 99.9999999% safe. Yeah. Each 9 is an order of magnitude difficulty increase.
Thanks so much for the presentation. I was curious about the Tesla bot. Specifically, I'm wondering if there are any specific applications that you think the humanoid form factor lends itself to. And then secondary, because of its human form factor, is emotion or companionship at all thought about on the product roadmap at all?
We certainly hope this does not feature in a dystopian sci-fi movie. We're trying to be as literal as possible. Can it do boring, dangerous, repetitive jobs that people don't want to do? Once we can have it do that, then maybe it can do other things too, but that's the thing that would be really great to have. It could be your buddy too. If I want to have it be your friend and whatever. I'm sure that people will think of some very creative uses.
thanks for the really incredible presentation. My question's on the AI side. So one thing we've been seeing is that with some of these language modeling AIs, we've seen that scaling has just had incredible impacts in their capabilities and what they're able to do. So I was wondering whether you're seeing similar kinds of effects of scaling in your neural networks and your applications.
Absolutely. A bigger network, typically we see it performs better, provided you have the data to also train it with. And this is also what we see for ourselves. Definitely in the car, we have some latency consideration to be mindful of. And so there we have to get creative to actually deploy much, much larger networks. But as we mentioned, we don't only train neural networks for what goes in the car. We have these auto-labeling pipelines that can utilize models of arbitrary size. So in fact, we've trained a number of models that are not deployable, that are significantly larger and work much better because we want 100%, like we want much higher accuracy for the auto-labeling. And so we've done a lot of that, and there we definitely see this trend.
Without the auto labeling, I think we would not be able to solve the self-driving problem. One of the things we're seeing is that the car's predictive ability is eerily good.
Right. Yeah, we see this often where we have something that is not visible, but the neural network is making up stuff that actually is very sensible. Sometimes it's eerily good, and you have to you're wondering this is in the training set. And actually in the limit, you can imagine the neural net has enough parameters to potentially remember Earth. So in the limit, it could actually give you the correct answer, and it's kind of like an HD map baked into the weights of the neural net.
I have a question about the design of the Tesla bot. Specifically, how important is it to maintain that humanoid form? To build hands with 5 fingers that also respects the weight limits could be quite challenging. You might have to use cable-driven, and then that also causes all kinds of issues.
I mean, this is just going to be bot version 1. I mean, we'll see. It needs to be able to do things that people do, and be a generalized humanoid robot. For now, we'll give it 5 fingers and see if that works out okay.
Hi, thanks a lot for the presentation. So an old professor of mine told me that the thing he disliked a lot about his Tesla was that the autopilot UX didn't really inspire much confidence in the system, especially when objects are spinning, classifications are flickering. I was wondering, even if you have a good self-driving system, how are you working on convincing Tesla owners, other road users and just the general public that your system is safe and reliable?
A while back, cars used to spin. They don't spin anymore. Not in. If you've seen the FSD beta videos, they're pretty solid, and they will be getting more solid.
Yeah, as we add more and more data and train these multi-cam video networks, these are pretty recent, actually, just a few months old, and we're still improving it. It's not a done product, and in our minds, we can clearly see how this is just going to be perfect vector space, because why not? All the information is there in the videos. It should produce it given lots of data and good architectures.
This is what I hear all the time when people talk about FSD. A few years ago, FSD definitely was way worse than what it is now. To think that it's going to stand still or even plateau on capability, you'd have to be sucking the glass if you think that's how that's gonna roll.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the short to medium term economics of the bot. I guess I understand the long-term vision of replacing physical labor, but I also think repetitive, dangerous, and boring tasks tend to not be so highly compensated. And so I just don't see how to reproduce start with a supercar and then break into the lower end of the market. How do you do that for a robot humanoid?
Well, I guess we'll just have to see.
I was curious to know how the car AI prioritizes occupant safety versus pedestrian safety, and what thought process goes into deciding how to bake this into the AI.
The thing to appreciate is that from the computer standpoint, everything is moving slowly. To a human, things are moving fast. To the computer, they are not moving fast. So I think this is, in reality, somewhat of a false dichotomy. Not that it will never happen, but it will be very rare. Computers are fast and humans are slow. On the rocket side, you cannot steer the rocket to orbit. We actually hooked up a joystick to see if anyone could steer the rocket to orbit, but you need to react at roughly 6-7 hertz. People can't do it. Not even that's pretty low, We're talking more aiming for 30 hertz type of thing.
With hardware 3, there's been lots of speculation that with larger nets,
it's hitting the limits of what it can provide. How much headroom has the extended compute modes provided, and at what point would hardware 4 be required, if at all?
That hardware 3 or the full self-driving computer 1 will be able to achieve full self-driving at a safety level much greater than a human, probably, I don't know, at least 200 or 300% better than a human. Then obviously there will be a future hardware 4 or full self-driving computer 2, which we'll probably introduce with the Cybertruck. So maybe in about a year or so. That is probably, well, that'll be about 4 times more capable, roughly.
So are you worried at all, since you don't have any depth sensors on the car, that people might try like adversarial attacks, like printed out photos or something to try to trick the RGB neural network?
Pull some like Wile E. Cody stuff, you know, like paint the tunnel on the wall. We haven't really seen much of that. I mean, for sure, like right now, if you most likely if you had like a T-shirt with a T-shirt with like a stop sign on it, which I actually have a T-shirt with a stop sign on it, and then you like flash the car, it will stop. I proved that. We can obviously, as we see these adversarial attacks, then we can train the cars to, notice that, well, it's actually a person wearing a T-shirt with a stop sign on it, so it's probably not a real stop sign.
My question is about the prediction and the planning. I'm curious, how do you incorporate uncertainty into your planning algorithms? Do you just basically assume, you mentioned that you run the autopilot for all of the other cars on the road. Do you assume that they're all going to follow those rules, or are you accounting for the possibility that, well, they might be bad drivers, for example?
We do account for multimodal futures. It's not that we just choose one. We account for, okay, this person can actually do many things. And we use their actual physics and kinematics to make sure that they're not doing a thing that would interfere with us before we act. So if there's any uncertainty, we are conservative and then would yield to them. Of course, there's a limit to this, because if you're too conservative, then it's probably not practical. So at some point, we have to assert. And even then, we make sure that the other person can yield to us and act sensibly.
Like before we introduce something into the fleet, we will run it in shadow mode, and we'll see what would this neural net, for example, have done in this particular situation, and then effectively the drivers are training the net.
Thanks for the presentation. So I am curious. Appreciate the fact that the FSD is improving, but if you have the ability to improve one component along the AI stack that presented today, whether it is simulation, data collections, planning and control, etc., which one, in your opinion, is going to have the biggest impact for the performance of the full self-driving?
It's really the area under the curve of these like multiple points, and if you improve anything, it should improve the area.
We need all of the nets to be surround video. And so we still have some legacy. This is very short term. Obviously, we're fixing it fast. But there's still some nets that are not using surround video. And I think ideally they'll all use surround video.
I think a lot of puzzle pieces are there for success. We just need more strong people to also just help us make it work.
Yeah, that is the actual bottleneck.
So that is the actual bottleneck, I would say, and really one of the reasons that we are putting on this event.
Exactly. Well said, Andre. That there's just a tremendous amount of work to do to make it work. So that's why we need talented people to join and solve the problem.
My question is about the camera sensor. In the beginning of the talk, you had mentioned about building a synthetic animal. And if you think about it, a camera is a very poor approximation of a human eye. And a human eye does a lot more than take a sequence of frames. Have you looked into, these days are cameras like event cameras. Have you looked into them? Or are you looking into a more flexible camera design, or building your own camera, for example?
Well, with hardware 4, we will have a next generation camera. But I have to say that the current cameras, we have not reached the limit of the current cameras. And I'm confident we can achieve full self-driving with much higher safety than humans with the current cameras and current compute hardware. So we'll see continued evolution on all levels in pursuit of that goal. And I think in the future, people will look back and say, wow, I can't believe we had to drive these cars ourselves. Elevators used to have elevator operators. And there's someone there with like, a big relay switch operating the elevator. And then every now and then they'd get tired or, make a mistake and shear somebody in half. So now we made the elevators automatic. And you just go and you press the button and you can be in a 100-story skyscraper and don't really worry about it. Just go in and press the button and the elevator takes you where you want to go. It'll be the same thing like for cars. All cars will be automatic and electric, obviously. So there will still be some gasoline cars and some manual cars, just like there are still some horses.
And that concludes the AI Day 2021 Part C. Everyone seemed to be fairly ecstatic about Tesla's presentation back in 2021. There was a little bit of skepticism there, but that's why we do Tesla Throwback Thursday, to see where Tesla's been and the progress that they've made. Speaking of which...
Body's moving slow, spinning in the afterglow. Got it feeling so good. 'Cause this love is all night. This love is all right. This love is all night. This love is all right. We can't control it. See explosions in the sky. Moving faster than the sun over the horizon. Chance it all to feel alive. Breathe the air just like a fire. We can't control it. See explosions in the sky. Moving faster than the...
But hey, Tesla's just a car company, right? With that, Tesla's AI Day 2021 is done. We're able to see the progression, and Tesla has come quite a long way. Professor Hustle's office hours are in the comments below. Be easy. Peace.
Body's moving slow, spinning in the afterglow. Dancing till the daylight. 'Cause this love